Now, do you think that, speaking of DEI, and we just discussed everything has like some racial undertone to it. Like, oh, she won because she's black.
Yeah.
Oh, he's on because he's black. Oh, they put an Asian in this movie because they need to check off some box. Will we ever get to the point where we actually are colorblind and meritocracy comes back, and that, when it pertains to affirmative action and DEI, it's one of those topics where I don't believe that misrepresented races should get an extra I don't want to say special treatment, but if they're not up to standard, I don't feel like they should be my heart surgeon. Or or they should be the one operating on my mom or something along those lines. Whereas I feel like the meritocracy is what we need to get back to, but is that possible?
I would argue meritocracy's never existed.
Okay.
Because when you look throughout history, there's never been such a time as to say like, yo, just the best person for the job rises to the surface.
Right.
Because there's all these people who are never given a shot.
Yeah.
That could outdo others.
Okay.
Right? Like, you look at this, right? Taylor Swift. For her to debut as an artist.
Yeah.
Her parents, her dad was in finance.
Yeah.
He bought a record label.
Yeah.
And then people got to hear her music.
Right.
And I think that exact same pattern has been carried out through every system in the world, in history.
Right.
The people who have access to resources get access to opportunities.
Right.
Whether or not they were the best person for that opportunity.
But that's not a racial thing, right? That's really more of socioeconomic. Like, if I'm a rich Chinese person, I could basically hire Snoop Dogg to feature on my track, right? I can get Hype Williams to do the music video. I can buy X billion streams on Spotify, etc. That's really, to me, not a racial thing. It's really just how much money do you have?
Yeah, but race and money and opportunity have always been connected in America.
Yeah.
At least, right?
Right.
In America, throughout history, literally racial classifications, right?
Yeah.
White, black, Indian.
Yeah.
It was on the census. In 1787, the Constitutional Convention convened. That's when they came up with the 3/5 compromise.
Yeah.
That said, black people will be counted as 3/5 of a person on the census for the purpose of distributing representation to the states.
Okay.
And ever since 1790, the first U.S. Census, it's been, everybody in this country has been legally racially coded. And your racial classification dictated your access to educational opportunity, to being able to get loans, to being able to own land, to being able to run for office.
Right.
And so that's why I say meritocracy's never existed, at least in the USA. At least in the USA. Because literally so many people were cut out of the opportunity to start a business.
Right.
Cut out of the opportunity to run for office.
Right.
Not because they were dumb, not because they didn't, have what it took, but because they were born to the wrong parents.
Okay, but I have a kind of a crazy idea.
Yeah.
Okay, because I feel like DEI, affirmative action, all of these things have put some type of glass ceiling on us because, we are now, at least as it pertains to the government and schools and just the powers that be, when we check off a box that says Asian, Black, Hispanic, etc., we're already categorized. And I feel like just being categorized is already either marking us or taking, it doesn't matter who's looking at the application, they'll definitely have prejudices in some way, right? You just have to admit that.
Yeah.
So what if we went to a system where there was no box to check, and another system where there was no name to fill in? So you didn't know who that person was. You didn't know his ethnicity or her ethnicity. And I really want to use it in the legal system. So if you are going to trial, I don't want the defendant to show up in court. I want them
I
to
fuck
be in a
with that.
box,
Yeah.
in a penalty box per se.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Opaque.
Opaque.
They don't know who it
nothing.
is.
You don't know the person's
Yeah.
name. You don't know if he's Indian, Hispanic, Chinese, black. Doesn't matter. You
I
don't
like
know
that.
his name. It's a number.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows you exactly, because it shows you exactly what the charges are.
Mm-hmm.
It shows the defense and what their defense essentially is,
Mm-hmm.
and the plaintiff or the state or the prosecution and what their proof is. And the judge cannot see, nor can the jury see what ethnicity. You can't even see what sex the person is. Maybe sex you have to, because if it's like a murder case, between
Right.
like
Right. There's
spouses,
reasons. Yeah.
there's reason behind it
Mhm.
or whatnot. But I feel like let's just make this completely anonymous across the board.
See, I actually really like that idea, because I think that is what it would take for meritocracy to exist.
Mhm.
Right? There's a 2016 Harvard Business School study
Right.
that showed that identical resumes
Mhm.
with Black, Asian, and white names.
Mhm.
The Asian names, and these are made up resumes. It's
Right.
the same resume, just with different names on it.
Yeah.
The Asian and Black names got like 50% fewer callbacks
Mhm.
than the same resume with a white name on it.
Right.
So I think that's a great idea, honestly.
Yeah,
if
right?
if people had to make decisions actually based on somebody's accomplishments and achievements and
Right.
and their answers to questions, that would be great. But I don't know, man. Good luck, like good luck
Implementing that.
implementing that across our society.
I know, because it's the
and I'll-
opposite of affirmative action.
And I'll say also, Jeff, that if we could do that, I'd be all for that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything short of that, and I don't think there's any way of actually making something meritocratic,
Okay.
right? Because that's you, like what you just proposed. I actually really fuck with, but I think anything short of that, and it's still gonna fall right back in the same thing. It's gonna fall right back into these same patterns of people make so many presumptions that are based on race,
Mhm.
are based on national origin, are based on gender.
Right.
And unless we can actually remove that, then there's never going to be meritocracy, which is why affirmative action, which is why giving people access to opportunities,
Mhm.
it's not giving people opportunities they don't deserve.
Right.
It's giving them access to the opportunities they deserve but are held back from.
I'll tell you why this will never happen, and even though it's a pipe dream of mine, because if you talk to an immigration agent at LAX or anyone that does type of TSA security,
Yeah.
right? They're going to say they're not racist, but when they see someone in a hijab,
Yeah.
they're going to question them much more than they would even an Asian,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
So, and then they're going to claim for national security, a lot of other reasons behind it that they need to profile.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and they'll say that's for the safety of the security of the nation,
Yeah.
essentially.
And what's wild to me too is you look, most serial killers
Yeah.
in American history have been white dudes.
Yeah.
Right? You watch Bundy, right?
Yeah.
Like, so this myth of like, we're just profiling this person because they're more likely to do this. It's like, are they more likely to do this, or you think something about them,
Yeah.
and then it's confirmation bias,
Right.
Right? Of course, you pull over 100 black dudes,
Right.
and you pull for every one white dude you pull over,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna wind up finding more black people committing crimes
Mhm.
because you've got 100 times greater sample.
Right.
Same thing, right? Like you look at Asians as better engineers.
Mm-hmm.
You interview 20 Asians for every one Latino person.
Right.
You're gonna hire someone that's Asian 95% of the time.
Right. But what if the fact is that there's more Asian parents who want the kids learning engineering and forcing them into engineering degrees versus other races who are like, oh, go be an artist? Or because no Chinese parent is allowing their kid to go be an artist. Everyone knows that.
We're
you know?
weirdos.
So sometimes I feel like that's okay, actually.
Yeah.
Like because if the pool is wider, and as you probably could look at statistics at any school, like, all right, engineering, school of engineering, how many Asians are doing that versus other races? It's probably more of us anyways, which goes into the next topic that I wanted to talk about was the Google hire who was
Yeah.
rejected at, I think, 16 schools.
16 out of 18 schools. Stanley Zhong, he was
Yes.
a high school student. He applied to 18 colleges,
Yeah.
was rejected from 16 of them.
Right.
And then he was hired by Google for an engineering job fresh out of high school.
Fresh out of high school.
Not before he went to college.
But I think he's suing now the UC system and a
Yeah.
bunch of all universities
Yeah.
who rejected him, out in the name of affirmative action,
Yeah.
essentially, right? That's where affirmative action went against Asians.
Yeah, so this is what this is what I've been saying for like the last couple years,
Yeah.
right? I think there's two issues at play.
Mhm.
One is, should affirmative action exist?
Yeah.
The other is, are higher education institutions racist against Asians?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the answer is yes to both.
Okay.
I think we
Okay.
need affirmative action,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we need to deal with anti-Asian racism.
Okay.
And I also think the way we deal with it isn't by abolishing affirmative action,
Mhm.
but by fighting anti-Asian racism.
So adjusting the quotas, or how would you adjust it? Because those two ideas butt heads with each other, right?
So this is I actually literally just I worked on a post for Hate is a Virus.
Boom.
Shout outs to our nonprofit about the ways that, honestly, in America, broadly speaking,
Yeah.
both the right and the left are racist against Asians.
Okay.
And this is the thing, right? Because we're kind of, like Schrodinger's cat.
Mm-hmm.
We're Schrodinger's minority,
Okay.
right? The right looks at us and says, you're aliens, you're all potential spies,
Yeah.
you're un-American, you're not Christian enough, you're destroying our country, you're buying up land, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
The left often looks at Asians and says, you're too white. Right? You're
Okay.
not down. You don't understand slavery. You
Mhm.
don't understand. You haven't been through things. You're new immigrants.
Yeah.
And people from both sides, we get all these stories about what Asians are and aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually lies, actually.
Mhm.
All those stories are inaccurate.
Yeah.
And it's because Asians throughout American history have served as pawns.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Chinese were brought in to work the railroads.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as the railroad was done, we were made illegal, Chinese exclusion.
Yeah.
Japanese came in
Yeah.
to work agriculture, worked
Yeah.
in Hawaii, worked up and down the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were incarcerated. And actually, even before that, in 1907 and 1924, they were made illegal. They also weren't allowed to become American.
Right.
Filipinos, it just goes on and on. You
Mhm.
look at Indians, right?
Mhm.
South Asians who were brought in to work in engineering industries and tech. And then, post 9/11, it was hate crimes.
Mhm.
And then right now, even, we're hearing all this stuff about H-1B visas.
Yeah.
When in reality, dude, if it wasn't like, y'all think that DeepSeek versus ChatGPT is bad right now. Bro,
Mhm.
if South Asians weren't in this country for the last 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
American tech would be so far behind
Right.
the rest of the world.
Right.
And this is what's constantly been done to Asians over the last 150 years.
Right.
Is we kind of don't have allies in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone just wants to use us.
Mm.
And I think what's super important is Asians need to understand this. Asians need to understand that, this dude, Edward Bloom,
Yeah.
right, who was the lawyer behind the anti-affirmative action case that went before the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
For the last 30 years, he was looking for someone to be the face of his campaign. And he
Right.
found these Asians who thought, dude, finally somebody's fighting for me.
Right.
But he didn't do it because he cared about Asian people.
Mm-hmm.
He did it because he wanted to make a name for himself.
Okay, but you see, as it pertains to this
Mhm.
Google guy, what was his name again?
Stanley Zhong.
Okay, as it pertains to Stanley Zhong, I feel like, oddly,
Mm.
affirmative action was a detriment to him. But when he went into the workplace, Google was like, snap you up.
See,
You
that's
know?
what, that exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
okay, the smart company out there
Mm-hmm.
was saying, I don't care what race you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're a smart engineer. Come on board. But the schools, because they had to follow any type of DEI or any type of affirmative action initiative, they let a good one go. They let one pass. And I feel like that's a testament of that's why this affirmative action system is flawed. Because when a huge, one of the top 5 companies in the world pick up this talented kid out of high school. That proves to you that actually, you know, these companies without these DEI measures are able to really hire the best, the cream of the crop.
Well, so here's the funny thing though, right? Because UCs actually don't practice affirmative action.
Right.
For a long time, actually now, the UCs have been race blind.
Okay. Yeah.
So what I'd say is affirmative action isn't the enemy. Anti-Asian racism is the enemy.
Okay.
Right? Because if we can get people to stop, you know, like one of the major points that I do know about is that they say Harvard systemically ranked Asians lower on personality scores. And that's often the excuse that was given for not accepting really valid candidates to incoming classes at Harvard. Right. So that, to me, the issue was not affirmative action. The issue wasn't, oh man, all these Black and Latino kids are taking up Asian spots. The issue is that Asians have been painted by America in a way that we're disposable or we're easily ignored.
Right.
And affirmative action plays into that. You see how Asian Americans, in reality, a lot of our communities, you know, shouts to the Lao and the Hmong and the Khmer and Mien communities, who go through a lot of real stuff. A lot of them are having issues with you know, high school dropouts or college degrees and all that. But those numbers, those statistics are hidden and just said, oh, Asians are doing fine. A lot of Asians aren't doing fine, but Asians as a whole are doing fine. And so the issue with how Asians are being painted in America, to me, it's affirmative action isn't the enemy. The enemy is that we're just generally disregarded. And you can see it because, you know, ever since that Supreme Court ruling in 2023, actually admission of Asians hasn't gone up. Some schools it's gone up, other schools it's gone down. It's generally kind of stayed about the same. So that tells me that the system of affirmative action wasn't the issue.
The personal biases.
It's personal biases. It's
or institutional
social,
biases for that matter.
Institutional, just American culture doesn't know what to do with Asians because we don't fit into this black and white narrative.
Well, that's why I feel like the whole like whites versus minorities is kind of too broad of a catch-all for everything, you know, like, and it's gone against whites too. I have a friend of mine in New York. He couldn't get a job at a bank because he's like, I'm a middle-aged white guy. They're not hiring us anymore. It doesn't matter how qualified I am. It doesn't matter how anything I am. I'm just, there's no place for me anymore. And I feel like that has actually played in to let's say the past election and people swinging the other way, thinking like, you know, I was never racist before this. You know, I don't even want to call myself racist now. But the fact that like my life is being affected for me being a middle-aged white guy, I have to go the other way or I won't have a job anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, really what it comes down to, I think, America's economy is not doing well. America's industries aren't doing well. And, you know, in the 90s, in the 70s, in the 60s, when our economy was flush with cash, it was easy for this country to say, hey, everyone's welcome, everyone belongs. You know, after World War II, we were a new superpower. When an economy is booming, it's easy to be inclusive and welcoming. Because there's enough.
You're coming from a place of abundance.
And right now, America has been in a protracted recession, pre-recession state. It's not getting better. Eggs are high, tariffs are going up. And you know, it's the people on the margins that gets doubly squeezed. Everyone's in trouble, and then the people on the margins are the ones who get scapegoated. Right? Are the ones, and that's why now it's immigrants who are being blamed. It's all of these people being targeted. And I don't know where it's going to go. But I think that we have to be aware of that. We have to be aware that it's not like people are just suddenly waking up and deciding to believe or vote a certain way. It's because there's social pressures that are exposing what's always been a possibility. We're doing well enough not to worry about it.